This is another quick lecture series on macromolecules, and the macromolecules we are going to be talking about specifically today are the proteins. Now, what are the characteristics of proteins? What are the classification of proteins? But basically, this lecture series will be focused on the 20 essential amino acids, of course, that makes up the protein, the classification of the amino acids that makes up the proteins, because of course the amino acids are the building blocks of what? Of proteins, and more or less the monomers of what? Of proteins. And of course proteins are polymers. Now, just like we handled when it comes to carbohydrate, we looked at carbohydrate classification, though we have not looked at the metabolism aspect. So there are lecture series that will come to explain, give a detailed explanation. What's the essence of these classes with Mosjaru? It gives a detailed explanation and a quick summary of these macromolecules, so you get to understand properly where you are having, especially those persons that are having issues when it comes to macromolecules, the basics. First of all, we're starting from the basics before we now move on to the metabolism aspect. So hold yourself tight. Now let's look at it. Now, first off, we are going to be looking at, of course, we are looking at proteins. Now, of course, proteins are very essential for our diets. Of course, we need proteins, they have a lot of functions and the rest. But proteins, basically, before we begin to look at the amino acids, of course, that makes up these proteins, we want to specifically look at, first off, we must know that proteins are categorized, of course, can be classified, definitely, and proteins have different structural representations. So first off, we need to know they are basic structures that are used to represent proteins. Now, what are these structures? Now, these structures are what we regard as, one, we have primary structure. So proteins have primary structure. Now, which these primary structures is actually concerned with the type of amino acids that are found in the proteins. And number two, we have what's called the secondary structure. Now, this is another structural representation, of course, of proteins. And number three, we have the tertiary structures of proteins. And these tertiary structures actually give the spatial arrangement of the amino acid, the three-dimensional arrangement of the amino acid in the protein. Now, the fourth structure, which is regarded as the word as the quaternary structure. Now, the quaternary structure is the structure that shows the arrangement of the polypeptide chain. Now, proteins that have more than one polypeptide chain usually possess the quaternary structures. Now, this polypeptide chain now brings us to our case study. Now, the building block of proteins is amino acids. Now, amino acid sequence of amino acids joins together to form the polypeptides. So a polypeptide actually is made of amino acid residue. Now, a protein can be made of one polypeptide chain, it can be made of two polypeptide chain, it can be made of three polypeptide chain, it can be made of four polypeptide chain, and so on. But these polypeptide chains are made of what? Amino acids. Now, this now brings our mind to the aspect that we need to look at what are these amino acids that forms the proteins. But first off, again, now these are structural representations of what? Of proteins, so to say. Now, proteins also have structures. Now, there are different structures. There are three main structures, or rather, there are three main types of what? Of proteins. Now, these are the structural representation of the proteins, but there are different types of proteins. So we'll begin to look at the amino acids now. We have not gone into the amino acids now. Now, we have some proteins are what? Are fibrous, are categorized as what? Fibrous proteins. Now, there are some proteins that are categorized as what? As globular proteins. Now, there are some proteins also that are categorized as what? As membrane proteins. Now, you should go to differentiate these, though we are going to be excellently fast, but it's just to bring down the details so that we have a good understanding, a proper knowledge when it comes to what? When it comes to proteins. Now, proteins are found everywhere in the human body, and some proteins, for example, collagen is an example of a fibrous protein. We have keratin that is found in the skin that gives, of course, rigidity to the skin and all that. Now, globular proteins are usually enzymes. Now, enzymes are proteinous in nature, and most of the time, most globular proteins are enzymes. Now, there are some proteins that are found in membrane, so we call them membrane proteins. So these are the three categorizations of proteins that you want to look at now. Now, this lecture series is not basically pointing towards looking at the structures or the types of proteins, but I needed to just bring it out so that you'll be able to understand in case you are having an issue concerning that. But our major focus on today's class are the amino acids that forms these proteins. Now, very quickly, without wasting much of your time, very quickly, now we need to pay attention to the amino acids. First off, there are 20 standard amino acids. 20. So look at it now. We have the amino acids. I'll represent them with AA just because of space. Pardon me. AA amino acids. Now, these amino acids, there are 20 standard amino acids. Now, these standard amino acids have different structure. But first off, what is the basic structure of an amino acid? And how do I get to know easily these amino acids with their structures? Now, some of these amino acids are represented with symbols. Different symbols. So there's an amino acid that is represented with W, there's an amino acid that is represented with F, there's an amino acid that is represented with E, with Q, with N. So we have to look at these amino acids to be able to remember them. So very quickly, without wasting much time. Now, what is the basic structure of an amino acid? First, now, an amino acid is represented with this. An amino acid is represented with this. This is the basic structure of an amino acid. Now, look at it now. This is the basic structure of an amino acid. Now, you can notice that this amino acid has a carboxylic group. Now, this is a carboxylic group, and it has an amino group, the NH2 group, which is the amino group. So it has both a carboxylic group and, of course, it has an amino group. Now, this group signifies that these amino acids can have two terminals. This part is called the C terminal, while this part is called the N terminal of an amino acid. So the C terminal and, of course, the N terminal of an amino acid. Now, this arrow represents the type of amino acid. So we are going to be bringing it out, all the 20 standard amino acids, so we can easily change this arrow so that you're able to follow us very well. Now, the arrow determines the type of amino acids. Now, if I want to represent this amino acid, but please just take note of this very quickly, that this is the basic structure of an amino acid. That again, an amino acid has a carboxylic and an amino end that you should put into consideration. Very, very important. Now, this arrow group determines the type of amino acids. So we're going to be starting with the simplest amino acid. We'll take it step by step. So it's quite a very simple and easygoing class. Now, look at it. So we start from the beginning, but you have to pay attention to that basic structure of amino acid. Now, the amino acid that have the arrow end, so I will draw the structure again for us. COOH, and I'm having H, and I'm having H2N, and of course I'm having arrow. Now, when the arrow of an amino acid is H, the amino acid is said to be what? Glycine. What do I mean? If I decide to remove this arrow symbol here and represent it with H, the amino acid here is what? Is glycine, and glycine is represented as G. That is glycine. That is simple to represent glycine as what? As G. Now, this glycine is the simplest amino acid. and it is the only amino acid that is optically inactive. It is the only amino acid that is optically inactive. Now, what do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? As a good chemistry student, for an amino acid, or rather for a carbon or a compound to show to be able to rotate light, that means for a compound to be optically active, it must possess a what? A chiral carbon. Now, what is a chiral carbon? A chiral carbon is a carbon that is attached to 4 different substituents. So a carbon that is attached to 4 different substituents is categorized as being a chiral carbon. Now, let me give you an instance. I have a carbon, I have Cl for instance, I have H, I have Br, and I have F for instance. Now, if you look at this carbon, it's attached to 4, not just 4 substituents or 4 atoms, but all the atoms are what? Are different. So because of that, this carbon is regarded as a chiral center or a chiral carbon. Now, chiral carbons have the ability to rotate light, rotate either to the right and of course either or to the left. Now, when it can rotate light to the right, it is said to be a D compound. That means the D actually stands for dextro-rotatory. But when it rotates to the right, that means it is what? Levo-rotatory. Now, look at the phenomenon properly. Now, why did I come to this area? Remember, to make this class, to make amino acid so simplified and easy for you to remember, that this glycine, as the simplest amino acid or the smallest amino acid, is the only amino acid that is optically inactive, because the arrow group has H and the carbon here is what? Is not a chiral carbon. So I took my time to explain what a chiral carbon is. That is a carbon that is attached to 4 different substituents. Remember the key word, 4 different substituents or atoms. Now let's go back to our amino acids. Now the next amino acid, remember this group still remains our arrow group. Now this is the basic structure of amino acid. Now when the arrow group is represented with is CH3, a methyl, that means a methyl group attached here. That means the amino acid is represented as A. That amino acid is A. And what does A stand for? Is alanine. This amino acid is alanine. So this is 1, this is 2. Now this amino acid is alanine. So alanine is represented with the symbol A. Now when this arrow group again is represented, number 3, so when the arrow group is represented with a methyl that is attached to a benzene ring. Now look at what I'm talking about. If I'm having something like this now, if I'm having something like this, I have arrow group represented with CH2, then I have a phenyl attached to the methyl. Now I'm having something like this. Now when you have something like this, the arrow group is a phenyl and a methyl. Remember, when it was alanine, it was just a methyl group. But this situation now, we are having a benzene ring, that means a phenyl attached to the methyl. So I'm having something like this. I want to extend the carbon, so I have CH2 and I'm having this. So I can easily draw the structure of this amino acid. And which amino acid is this? This amino acid is phenylalanine. This amino acid is phenylalanine. Phenylalanine. Now, and phenylalanine is specifically represented with the symbol F. So if I bring out F, or you see F, so which amino acid is with F, then you know that is what is phenylalanine. So first off, we have taken 3 amino acids, which is the GAF. What does it stand for? The glycine, the alanine, and of course the phenylalanine. Now, the next amino acid we're looking at now, quickly. So we have the arrow group. Remember, this is the basic structure. Now, number 4 amino acid. We're going to be looking at what? When the arrow is represented with is equal to CH2 and I'm having an OH. You see, an OH, and you should remember that when a compound, in chemistry, when a compound have the functional group, the hydroxide group, that means that compound is having some elements of being an alcohol. Now, Of course, we have alcoholic amino acid, and this particular one that I just brought out now, this is the amino acid which is known as what? Serine, and it's represented with what? With S. Serine is represented with what? With S. So we have taken 4 amino acids so easily. So if I want to draw the structure of serine, I can easily draw it. Now this is the structure of what? Of serine. This is the structure of what? Of serine. Now, the 5th amino acid I want to take now. So we're going to move on to the 5th amino acid. So I might bring down my structure to this end here. So it allow me to represent some amino acids properly. So we still have the arrow group, of course. Now, which amino acid? Amino acid number 5. So we're going to be looking at when the arrow group. So I'm having arrow is equals to CHSH. Now, if you notice something between the serine and this particular group, you notice that the O has been represented with what? With an S. Now, in chemistry, when the O in OH has been replaced by an S, we call it a mercaptan. So, therefore, this particular amino acid is represented with what? With C. And what does it stand for? This is cysteine. Cysteine. Please don't be a fool. There is another amino acid that is represented that is known as what? As 16. But remember, 16 is not a standard amino acid. So the amino acid that we are listing just now are the standard amino acids. We are taking a good look at the standard amino acids. Now, look at it now. So we have this cysteine. So an examination question can come forth. Which of the following amino acid is a mercaptan? Now, what is a mercaptan? A mercaptan is just represented, maybe I'm having something like this. SH. This is a mercaptan. Now, therefore, I can simply say that cysteine is a mercaptan. So why am I calling it a mercaptan? Because the O have been replaced by the sulfur atom. Now, quickly, if we say this, remember, I also have spotlighted it, I brought it out that cysteine and cysteine are quite different. 2 cysteine molecules forms cysteine. 2 cysteine molecules forms cysteine due to the formation of, and there's a disulfide linkage. There's a disulfide linkage that forms this cysteine. So this cysteine rather. So this is cysteine. This is cysteine. So quickly take it off so that you don't confuse it. That cysteine is not a standard amino acid. So if I want to put this here, I will simply say remove the arrow group, obviously, and of course it becomes what? CH, of course 2. There's a 2 here. CH, then and I have SH. Now this amino acid is what is regarded as what? As cysteine. Now the 5th one, I'll come back, remove this from here, and I'll come back. Then amino acid number 6. So we're taking first 10 amino acids and we're going to look at them properly so we're able to represent them with their symbols. So it's not hard. So we have the first one is what? Is glycine, G. Second one is alanine, A. The 4th one is phenylalanine. And the third one is phenylalanine. The 4th one is serine. The 5th is cysteine. Then this 6th, now I want to take the 6th amino acid. And what amino acid is that? When the arrow obviously is represented with what? We are having arrow is equals to we are having CH2, then we are having an X, then CH3. Now, pardon me. This amino acid, I don't want to wipe it off so that you're able to follow it up again. Now let me take it again to this other side so that you get to follow. So number 6 amino acid. So I'm having arrow is equals to CH2, then we are having X, then CH3. Now this amino acid is regarded as methionine and the symbol is M. Methionine. So this is an easy way for you to know these amino acids and their symbols. So if I replace the arrow group with this, that means I'm having methionine. Please, methionine is a sulfur-containing amino acid just like cysteine. So we have two sulfur-containing amino acid here, cysteine and methionine. So if I replace the arrow group here with this, that means I'll be having methionine. Now, very quickly, number 7 amino acid. Now, I want to look at that amino acid. And which amino acid is that? I want to look at what now? I want to look at lysine. So we'll check out lysine. Lysine is the 7th one. So when lysine, which structure is lysine having? What's the value of the arrow group? So I have to take it a little bit further. 7, lysine. When the arrow group is equals to CH2, 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 then we are having 4 CH2, CH2, then NH2. Now, this is lysine, and please, lysine is represented with K. So this is lysine represented with K. So we have taken 7 amino acids so far, so you can easily grab and know the amino acids. So we're working on 20 standard amino acids, but we have looked at 7 amino acids. Now let's look at the 8th amino acid, the 8th one. Now this amino acid is of importance, very, very important. And which amino acid is that? That amino acid where the arrow group is represented as CH2, then we have an extra. We have an extra carboxylic group, COOH. And what amino acid is this? This amino acid is what is regarded as what? As aspartic acid or aspartate. Aspartic acid or aspartate. Aspartic acid or aspartate. And aspartic acid is represented by the symbol D. By the symbol D. Therefore, so we have taken 8 amino acids just now with their symbols. So this is the first series of the class. So quickly, we'll look at the basic standard formula of amino acid. Remember, amino acid forms the proteins. Now, because we have looked at the amino acids, now we'll not say that there are 20 standard amino acids. First, the simplest one is the what? Is the glycine, represented with what? G. So when the arrow group is read with H, that amino acid is glycine, and glycine is the only amino acid that is optically inactive. We explained it in the video. Now, quickly, we went to the next, which is A. Of course, we have F, we have X, we have M, and of course, we have K and D. Now, these amino acids are standard amino acids. So, we're left with what? The 12 standards. So, we have taken 8, so breaking down little by little. So thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned to the next video and do well to subscribe so that you have some points when it comes to macromolecules and other points as regards chemistry. Thank you. My name is Mosjaro. I'll see you in the next video.